I'm Tirsa Wodash. I'm an architect. I own a company called Brick and Mortar. I'm out of Duluth, so I traveled a little bit to get here, but we're not far away. Architect by trade, but an entrepreneur by heart. I mean, it's literally just me, and then I have some independent contractors that help me. So it's very small. And my passion is in renovations of existing storefront buildings. So infilling the existing buildings that exist in our downtown districts. I've got about 14 years experience doing it, and I love it, and I love working with entrepreneurs. So that's what brought me here. And today we're going to talk about standout storefronts. There is so much that we could talk about, and this is just a portion of it, and we're going to focus on the outside. And afterwards, Char's going to get up and talk about financial opportunities to help pay for the fun ideas that you have. So we're not leaving you with just what could you do. We're going to dive deeper. So we're going to start with just understanding terminology. So we'll go quickly over the parts and pieces of your storefront. So we've got the facade. The facade is the wall, essentially. A facade is any wall of the outside of the building, but we're generally talking about whatever faces your street or where people enter your building. Perhaps you have a corner building, then you've got to be thinking about two facades. If you've got an active alley side, don't forget about that as well. So when we talk about facade, it's usually that main drag face, but don't forget about the other ones if that applies to you. Signage. Generally, the sign that we're pointing to here is the one that people have on their building, or it's on an awning. Lighting. Display windows, those are the windows that help you look into the space. And even if you're an office, having that connection from the outside in is just as important. It may just look a little different. And then your entrance. Are there other parts or pieces you think I'm missing? You want to talk about? Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is how do you stand out from your neighbor? How do you stand out from your competitors? So the last idea that I want you to take away from this is show, don't tell. Okay, show what you sell. Don't tell them with words. So that's what we're going to talk about in a multitude of ways, but we're going to come back around to that idea over and over again. So this first concept is the power of color. So often these buildings are built in a similar era, and then as a result, they're made of similar materials, and they're made of similar colors. And so everything starts to start to blend in. So depending on the historic nature of the building, you may or may not be able to punch up the entire color like we're maybe demonstrating here in this graphic, but there's other ways to introduce your branding colors. So if you think about what the branding colors that you have are, what are maybe two that you want to display on your storefront? And you can do them in less permanent ways. It could be signage. It could be like a pop of color in the front door. It could be with flower boxes. There are ways to do this that don't paint the entire facade. But if your facade is a different color than your neighbor, you better believe you're going to stand out, right? Imagery and signage. So I want to emphasize that images, the old adage, right? An image is worth 1,000 words. So someone's driving by in their car or even walking by. If they're driving by, you have a fraction of a second to capture their attention. If they're walking by, maybe 4 seconds. It's just not that much time. So how do you capture their attention? And they're looking this way, and your building's here. You may even have a parking lot dividing the street from your building. So how do you get the eye all the way to your facade, right? So signage is one of those ways. Chances are you've moved into your building and it has that sign that's parallel attached to the building. But if you start to think about signage that is perpendicular, it's facing the flow of traffic.
So blade signs are by zoning prohibited.
They're prohibitive in
the city of Virginia, which you can ask for a variance, but I think the largest variance right now for a new blade sign has been like 24 or 30 inches, something along those lines.
Well, and I'd be curious why. What is it that tells them that it's not meeting the historic nature?
Yeah. So right now, I think you have to ask for a variance for anything over 18 inches.
Okay, and 18 inches is pretty small. But here at Bob's Bike Shop, if you have a bicycle That's going to tell you what you sell, even if it was 18 inches. 24 and 30, it seems a little more reasonable. And that might be a limitation. Are you allowed to use the sandwich board type signs and interrupt the sidewalk traffic? Okay. So that's another way, then you're physically interrupting people as they walk by. And depending on your branding, if you are comfortable with introducing humor or a bit of cheekiness to it, then you might like crack a smile on someone's face and they're gonna remember you a little bit more. So that, it depends on your brand of how comfortable you are with adding some of those elements in, but that definitely is a good way to stand out. So blade signs may or may not be in, depending on where you are, but introducing signage that faces the flow of traffic is going to be more easily visible by those folks. But I want to reinforce the idea of using imagery versus words. And if you do use words, using small phrases or singular words to describe. So in the image, we do have some vinyl signs, right? But they're one-off words. They're telling you what other services Bob provides other than selling bikes. Bob can bring you on tours. He's got e-bikes, right? He's got your gear covered. So there's a use for vinyl signs, but I have seen more often that people are covering their whole window in a vinyl sign. Now we are not able to see into your space, and that is not necessarily what we're looking for. The other couple of sign things that we've got going on here, we've got our address at the top. That's important, right? And then notice that on the door, that's their hours. And the hours are hanging there. They're not permanent. So I see a lot that people put the hours with vinyl on the windows or on the door, but there's holidays, there's vacations, there's maybe a winter season hour than in your summer hours, right? So by having those hours flexible, you're going to be able to keep that up to date. And that can be really frustrating if someone comes to your door, you're closed, and those are not correct. So that's a simple thing that you can do that is very helpful, keeping things like that that need to be flexible for you. And there's also these really handy, it's like a window decal and it's a plastic sleeve. So you can just print off that letter-sized paper, and that's a good way to keep that flexible too. So those are those little things I was trying to show in this graphic. Are there other things that you notice or thoughts that you have? Now we're going to touch on lighting, and there are many, many layers of lighting. There's district lighting, there's exterior lighting, there's interior lighting. So we're going to touch on 4 layers of exterior lighting. So your pathway lights are the lights that are lighting up the sidewalk. That's how we're keeping the whole neighborhood safe, or your portion of the block. Then there's lighting from your entrance. That's how your customers feel safe approaching your door. Signage. Your sign is a billboard for you. If you leave that sign lit 24/7, when you're closed, people still know you're there. And then your display windows, same thing. If you leave those lit 24/7, that's a billboard. It's closed time shopping, window shopping for folks, right? And I've heard people have concerns about being able to see into the building, right? With those, if those display window lights are on, you can see into your space. But if you can see into your space, so can everyone else. So if that person decides to come in and do something unsavory, everyone can see them. So there is actually a layer of safety to that as well. So showing a graphic to show you the pathway lighting. This is showing how if you have continuous pathway lighting, then you can be creating that safe block. And so when we're leaving your restaurant and it's 10 o'clock at night and Bob's bike shop is closed, he can be continuing to create a safe neighborhood, and he's allowing folks to see what he sells. Same with signage and display lights. We want to keep them on all the time, or at least from bakery open to bar close. LED lights make that really economical these days and not, wreak havoc on the environment. But it's another kind of saying to remember is the eye goes where the light flows. So we're not on light bugs in that way, right? Like you just can't help yourself. So even during the day, if your sign is lit and your neighbor's sign is not, someone's eye is going to get drawn to yours first. And then your windows themselves, I don't know if you've noticed this, but if you're walking around a downtown, often you're just seeing a mirrored reflection of yourself or the building behind you in those windows. So by having that proper lighting behind the window, you're combating that situation, and now you can see the display properly. And then at night, your people will walk by or drive by and want that item and come back when you're open. So it's free advertising. So this is just that side by side, right? What do we see as a difference? Like, how does that feel to you to have a more activated storefront versus a less activated storefront? Is there anything that you notice between the two?
I mean, it's just far more noticeable, like, interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Bike shop in Virginia. Yeah.
More inviting.
Yeah, more inviting.
Yeah. And if it is lit up, it feels safe, feels welcoming. And we're hardy. We walk around in the winter, you know. And so if the whole district is lit up like this, then when you get done eating your meal or you need to distract yourself for that time, you're more likely to stick around a little longer and walk around. So this is a great way that neighbors should be working together and talking about what works and what doesn't work for them. I mean, it's just one more way other than like sharing events and doing those sorts of things together. How else could you talk about how you could be more cohesive? Not the same, but cohesive, right? So we're going to dive a little deeper on a concept of lighting. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to lighting. So there's just one aspect of lighting, and then we'll do our little demonstration over here. So this is a block in Lincoln Park, if you're familiar with Lincoln Park, Duluth. So there's a couple things happening in this image. Color temperature. Color temperature, the aspect of lighting that is color temperature is how warm or cool that light appears to your eye. And this is showing off that spectrum. So when the number is lower, it's a warmer light. When the number is larger, it's a brighter light. And bright meaning like coming to daylight, high noon sunlight. And that's in the units of Kelvin. So when you're picking out your bulb, you got your number and the K. That's what we're referring to. So in this block, you can see that there's warm lighting and there's cool lighting. What do you notice about what you're seeing here?
I can't read the credit union's name.
It's kind of washed out. Yeah. Does one feel different or?
The North Shore one feels more like it's a daytime office because it is so light, and the warmer ones remind me more of like evening places to shop maybe. And
Yeah.
like more restaurant feel.
Sure, yeah, and that's true. This is a restaurant.
Oh. Well, the street light has bulb burnt out, and that would really bother me. Clearly it is.
Well, and you're touching on one of those aspects. Whether we notice or not, we will feel like a space is off if the lighting isn't right. And that could be a bulb burnt out. Or that could be that you're mixing color temperature. If you've got more than one color temperature in a space, it's going to feel real strange and feel off to you, even if you can't pinpoint what that is. And one's not wrong, right? This kind of maybe fits with their branding more. But it feels a little cooler, colder, more institutional. And like a daytime type place. Yeah. So it can be a preference, and it also does invoke certain feelings, the warmer or the cooler temperatures. So so getting specific about standards, if you will, a restaurant wants to hover in this much warmer side. That creates that intimate feel. So even though you're just in a booth by yourself and you're really open to everyone else, if you've got lower lighting, more intimate lighting, you feel more by yourself, which is what you want. You're just wanting to be with the folks you came with. And then retail still wants to be warm and in those tones because that's what's flattering to the skin and flattering to product. And so maybe more in that 3,000 range. If you are a salon or you're doing eyebrows or something, then you might need more task lighting and it's getting brighter. Or in your office, like your lobby could be 3,000 K, but then maybe in your office you want 3,500, you want brighter task lighting. And that, again, it comes down to preference because there's the wattage, there's how actually bright it is. There's a color rendering index, that's how true the color looks. There's many other aspects that come into play. But what is important is in this color temperature specifically is not to mix your color temperatures, so to create zones. So even if it's not a physical wall, what is a more visual separation before you change that color temperature? And a lot of times you can have it just consistent. It really depends on what your needs are. It gets down to that task lighting when we usually want a brighter bulb. But that could be a lamp. That could be in the office, whatever that, you know. So I'd think about that for yourselves. But the warmer it is, the more intimate. Food wants to be under practically red light. You know, that's when it looks most savory. So you could play with that, what works best for you in different areas. So with that, let's do a little demonstration. So I'm just going to go to my last one here, so you know where to find me if you want to. And in that regard, on the counter back there, I dropped off a few handouts. So one's a handout that talks about the things that we talked about today, and then there are additional tips on there. We didn't talk about the other senses, right? We've got 5 senses. How can we be playing off of those senses in your storefront? Sorry, I think my wheels are not wheeling. And then also over there is a handout on the renovation process, like through the design process, if that's relevant. If you are not down that path yet, like perhaps that might be a good one for you to pick up. My business card is over there, and then also like a QR. If you're more modern, just want to scan it. So what we have here is the same display, right? The same elements, but we've got 2 different colors of light. So this one's a 5,000 K, and this one's a 2,700. I don't want to blind y'all. And I'm going to try to separate them a little bit more because So here we've got our soft light, and here we've got our bright light. Do these colors look different to you? Isn't that interesting? Who wants to be my Vanna? Who wants to come on? I want you to show us your arm. Put your skin under the light.
Under the light?
Yeah, let's see how it changes your skin tone. See that?
I'm only half tan.
So, I mean, let's think about dressing rooms, right? That's a hugely important space to have the light. Yeah.
I hate dressing rooms.
I feel like that's date lighting, like in your restaurant.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to sit at a restaurant.
And then see how we mix them? It's not great. So you want to be consistent as part of it. I don't know if we can show that well by just putting these next to each other, but it's not going to create the right color mix that you want. So it's just a little experiment, but hopefully impactful for you to see the difference in the quality of light just by that color temperature. Sweet. Questions? Tell me about your businesses. What are your challenges? What are you trying to figure out?
So I want to have people sitting at the window, like a bar there.
Yes.
Would you still want
So a
people to see in them? I want people to see people outside for sure and watch, people watch, but.
Yes, I would say yes, because activity attracts activity. So if people see those folks sitting in there eating, they want to know what's going on in there. It looks busy just by having those few bodies up at the window. Like I said before, people are driving by very quickly. It's not like someone's staring at these folks for an extended period of time as they are there. But people will notice that there are folks in there, and that is a hopping place. So how do I get there? And outdoor seating is an awesome idea, even if you're not a restaurant.
Yeah,